The time is 5 o'clock, and we do have quorum, so I will call this meeting of the July 8th, 2021 Plan Commission meeting to order. And this is a special Plan Commission meeting that will be focused on the planning structure in the city of Madison. First, we will hear from our technical facilitator.
All right. Welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. The chair, clerk, and technical facilitator are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted briefly. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. To any members of the public that have registered to speak, entered in Zoom, it must match the name you entered in registration. You remain muted and called until you're called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the board, please send it to the email list in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jesse. First, I'm going to ask Heather. I didn't get any registrants for public comment. Is that correct, Heather? Okay, so no registrants. Are there any disclosures or recusals from any members of the body? Seeing no raised hands, no disclosures or recusals. So tonight we will be having a presentation of information on a proposed new structure for planning for the city of Madison. There was quite a bit for you to take a look at before this meeting, so I hope you had a chance to rather digest that so that we can get questions answered. Because the plan is to move forward fairly quickly on this unless we have any stumbling blocks that we identify tonight. So the first person to kick this off will be Brian Grady. Brian.
Great, thanks, Chair Zellers. Yeah, Brian Grady in the Planning Division. Good evening, everyone. I'll kick this off, and then myself, Linda Horvath, Brianna Collins, and Urvashi Martin will all present segments of this, and I'll then wrap it up. I'll provide a little bit of background, just briefly revisit our meeting on this topic from back in December. And I think, Chair, you were curious as to how the commission would want to handle if we want to do questions like during the presentation or at the end. Any thoughts on how to handle questions? Any preference?
I would lean toward doing it within if it's something that commissioners need clarification on. Otherwise, folks might not kind of keep tracking. Are commissioners agreeable with that approach? Okay, I see agreement with that. So we'll do it in that way. And then obviously there can be questions at the end that cover anything. But yeah, okay. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, that sounds great. And yeah, there's lots to cover. So that inline question sounds like a good approach. And so yeah, just to provide just a bit of background. So we covered this. We attended a December 14th Plan Commission meeting, December 14th, 2020. A Plan Commission meeting where we introduced this topic. We've obviously since refined it. Some of the main things we discussed at that December 2020 meeting, we talked quite a bit about how a community engagement might be handled if we shifted to these district plans. We talked a lot about with this shift, would we truly stick to just doing these district plans, or will parts of the city, residents within parts of the city, push us to do a neighborhood plan or special area plan? Some skepticism there with some areas, healthy skepticism there that we would not be able to not stick to it, but we've tried to provide more shape to this, and we'll keep working on this. Some questions about how this process would interface with the comp plan update process and the comp plan generalized feature land use map, the comp plan GFLU map. I think those are some of the key points. And so we covered that. We've tried to address those questions with our refined materials. We've also have in the last few months met with different agencies within the city, met with folks from the Parks Division, transportation entities. We met with community development staff, and we try to get feedback on this proposal and how it might fit in with the work that they all do and how it might coordinate between different agencies. And again, I tried to just kind of provide more shape to this. And this is a difficult thing. It's a major shift. And it's even tough for us as staff to kind of wrap our heads around it, but we're trying our best. And we'll keep refining as we go forward. So with that, I'll just pull up the memo that will basically work off of the memo and go generally in chronological order as we go along. Let me just share my screen. And so I think you are all seeing this memo here. I'm seeing a head nod. Thank you. So we just provided a brief summary. Overall, trying to accomplish these things. We're trying to move towards discrete plan geographies, not having plans overlap each other. Have these plans be more standardized, and kind of moving up a little bit, not quite the comp plan level, but not as closer or deeper as the neighborhood plan level, but somewhere in the middle. Standardized plans cover the city kind of with a little more of a broader citywide perspective. I think the geography naturally forces us to use that more citywide perspective, but then still considering special needs and needs of certain areas and certain circumstances. We want to move towards full citywide coverage, so have our plans cover the entire city with some of the key recommendations. Here we mentioned land use, building heights, infrastructure, some of the key things that can guide our review of development proposals and also guide our infrastructure and overall city service recommendations. We want to move towards more frequent plan updates, and so we're kind of moving up a level in terms of the specificity, but that allows us to go around the horn, go around the city, potentially every 10 years or so. So we're getting that frequency in exchange for the level of detail. This would overall could replace the every 10 year, the decennial update to the comp plan GFLU map, which we just did back in the 2016, 17, 18 time period. We asked for feedback on the overall citywide GFLU map. We feel that district plans could basically remove that process, which we saw as difficult for folks to weigh in on a citywide effort like that. These new district plan maps would basically, a chunk at a time, replace the GFLU map or really update the GFLU map. And then finally, creating a mechanism, which we alluded to, kind of started the conversation in the comp plan. We included that section, but having a mechanism to retire sub-area plans as they kind of keep being created and really no mechanism to retire them. So those are kind of, we're left with them, and often they provide guidance that may not meet the current city priorities, or we have conflicting guidance in some areas. So we want to kind of broach that subject through these district plans. And that can be a good mechanism to look at plan retirement. So those are the overall things we're trying to accomplish through all of this. Unless there's any initial questions, I'll then turn it over to Linda to talk about some more of the background.
Wonderful. Thank you. And good evening, everybody. We initially did research on 9 different cities around the country and narrowed that down to 4 planning frameworks that we feel we want to take from as we continue to refine our plan framework. You can see those on the screen, those 4 that we've narrowed down to. Minneapolis with a comp plan, future land use, and built form maps. They focus more on strategic planning in terms of smaller areas rather than a traditional small area type plan. Denver is one we're kind of thinking is more closely aligning with how we're shaping up our plan framework. They have their Blueprint Denver, which is also a comprehensive plan, and it is made up of 19 district area plans. And those district area plans are compilations of neighborhoods. They have about 75 defined neighborhoods in their city, and they have grouped those into these 19 districts. We also looked at Milwaukee. They have a comp plan that's comprised of 14 neighborhood plans. They do some private fundraising as well for more deeper dive community engagement. And we found that that was interesting to us as something that we might want to kind of build upon as we did with the comp plan and some other projects. Raleigh has a comp plan with a growth framework and future land use and built form maps. Their comp plan is made up of 28 area plans that are adopted into the comp plan. And they're doing a more deeper dive, probably public engagement than we might do, but that's following the International Association for Public Participation Collaborate level. And they also have something that's a little bit unique and interesting to us as well, which is an online prioritization tool for scheduling their smaller area plans. And again, I just want to mention with Denver, that is linked in this memo. And if you want to take a look at their neighborhood planning initiative, that was rolled out in 2016. And we're even talking about maybe following up with them. We talked to them about 9 months ago, but maybe talking to them again in more detail about their experiences since they rolled this out in 2016. We think they've done maybe one sub-area plan now using this new framework, and we'd like to hear more on how that is working for them. We can move along to the next page. We have a table in the memo that you've likely seen, which is showing our proposed level of plans as we move forward. The comp plan obviously being our largest plan, and then moving into our sub-area plans from there, getting into a finer grain of recommendations. The district plan and other sub-area plans, we're kind of terming this. So the district plan is that larger grouping of neighborhood areas, generally greater than 20,000 people in these areas. Update frequency is about 10 years. Plan prep time is about 18 months. Other sub-area plans, again, are those smaller area plans, and those could include our CDBG plans, our special area plans like our Oscar Mayer, our Royster Clark plan, Cottage Grove Road plan, and then also maybe more traditional neighborhood plans. Now, those are things that would require maybe in this new framework a little more tougher set of criteria to come to the level of being plans we would do. But again, as Brian made clear in the beginning, this plan framework allows us to cover the whole city, and we have neighborhoods that have been waiting for plans for some time, and so we think that this will allow us to get to neighborhoods more quickly with plans, and so that's a major benefit. You can see the different topic areas and kind of what would be covered under the different levels of plans. And again, that district plan, because it's larger, we're looking at those larger systems planning topics like land use and transportation systems. We might go to, and you'll see in the plan mock-up, a little bit more detailed land use categories than we have in the comp plan that would nest within the comp plan categories. But then those smaller sub-area plans would not deal as much with land use or larger transportation systems. We would dig more deeply into the things we do now with smaller area plans, looking at more detailed transportation type things to complete incomplete networks that are within our developed areas, incomplete pedestrian ways and bikeways and streets and things. But we are still refining this. This table is, it's something we're still trying to get to that right level of recommendations among the different types of plans. Next page.
Before you move on,
Yes.
I want to find out if people have any questions about what's been covered so far. Alder Heck.
Thanks. I actually have a general question about this table. I had to look at this for a long time to make sure I appreciated it. It's summarizing a lot of, I think, the change in philosophy, I'll call it. So thank you. One question though, We heard in, I think, December in public comment when we first talked about this, about sustainability, I'll call it, and I wondered, should there be a row in this table devoted to what I'll generally call sustainability, and I know it's possible that infuses a great deal of the other columns, but I just wondered if you'd considered that.
We've talked about it I'm not sure that we talked about it as much in the plan framework discussion, but we've talked about it many times in other venues, and it is something that cuts across a lot of the levels, as you've mentioned. It maybe comes similar to equity. Equity kind of cuts across a lot of the levels too. And so do you have a separate chapter on that? Or do you address it as well as you can in each of the different topic areas? I would, open it up to my other colleagues on the call. If they wanted to comment on that as well.
Yeah, I would agree, Linda. Seemingly, certainly applies to different topic areas. And it's a good question. I would say that overall, this is where we need to continue to refine and calibrate the level of detail that these plans will have, and then also the topics covered by these plans. And I would say I'd like to have us include sustainability in our next level of conversations as we continue to refine this table out. I think that this table could probably be expanded to a few different sub rows that would indicate more what will be covered under these different topics, and we can include sustainability in that consideration. We haven't got there just yet.
Is that all, Alder Heck?
Just a comment. I don't know how to tackle that, but I could also see where I think Linda's analogy with equity was appropriate, and it might be that upfront statements about how sustainability should infuse all of these topics might be appropriate, and I appreciate that you don't want this table to turn into something that's 5 pages long too. So just a suggestion. So thanks for the information.
I have a comment question. Under development form, height setbacks and guidelines, under sub-area plans, it says could include design guidelines, setbacks. However, in the sample plan, there was mention of setbacks within that district plan. I would encourage that phrase be moved over to district plan to provide that level of flexibility, really, in those cases where setbacks or design guidelines might be really important for the district or part of the district. So I would encourage that change. In regard to historic and cultural resources, I'm not going to particularly ask a question right now, but at the end I will have some questions and comments, but I just wanted to point out that in other of these, it indicates more detailed recommendations like bus, pedestrian, bicycle, it mentions that, or under the development maximum building heights. So some specifics are being called for where historical and cultural resources, it's scanned for historic and culturally significant sites. So anyway, that's my only comment right now. I will have further comments and questions then more towards the end of the presentation. I think it's great to have this kind of a summary chart, and it is hard to have everything in it because it is a summary. Any other questions on what we've heard so far? No. Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. Thanks for the questions. So identifying plan content and level of specificity, as we're talking about, is challenging, and we're continuing to do that. We are continuing to focus on establishing the most appropriate scope for the district plan level. Generally, we kind of look at this as a hybrid between what we call our neighborhood development plans, which are plans we have traditionally created on the outskirts of the city and largely undeveloped areas. So the district plans would be a hybrid between those and our more detailed plans. Sub-area plans are, again, those CDBG, traditional neighborhood plans, special area and corridor type plans for interior parts of the city that are built up. We usually do a deeper dive. We do address land use in those now, but are proposing that we wouldn't do that in the future. These are for redevelopment sites. They're for plans where we look at design and sometimes placemaking and capacity building, particularly with our CDBG type plans. We also have a tracking system. Right now it's for the CDBG plans where we track the recommendations, which agencies are lead on them, and then recently kind of reinstituting that after several years of not having it in place, but considering maybe even having a report out on an annual basis to the Plan Commission on the progress of implementing our plans, maybe with the district plan process as well. With regard to recommendations and existing underlying sub-area plans as we move forward, we clearly have to talk about that as well as we formulate this proposal. We're talking about those types of recommendations that aren't within the scope of the district plan would be reviewed and considered as a district plan is developed, but those that are not in the scope of the district plan wouldn't be incorporated in that larger level plan, but would remain in those underlying smaller area plans unless those are actually retired. Retirement is the next topic here, and we're looking to the guidance from the comprehensive plan on how to address retirement. That plan, recommends that we come up with a procedure, and that's something that we've been talking about. We don't have that refined yet, but there is complexity and confusion that results from existing overlapping sub-area plans, and we need to address this. The district plan process provides an opportunity to review and consider these oftentimes overlapping plans or sometimes overlapping plans for potential retirement. And so we have to come up with something. There are some criteria that are proposed in the comp plan on the page that's referenced. Are those plans still relevant given the comp plan priorities and policies that have been laid out? Are there other plans for the same area that overlap? What is the age of the plans? So there are a lot of different things that we would like to consider. And some of the other cities we've looked at do have retirement protocols that I think we can draw from as we continue to refine that. Move to the next.
Wait a second. Could
yes.
you write again, please? There's
Sure,
a lot.
absolutely.
There's a lot on this
Yes.
page. Are there any questions? Okay, no surprise. I have a couple of questions. So on the tracking system, is that CDBG only plans right now? And you're talking about reinstituting the tracking system for CDBG?
Yes, so it is only for CDBG plans at this time. And it was offline for a while because we had some technical things we were trying to iron out with it. So we will be rolling that out again for CDBG plans very shortly. It's also something we are considering maybe, is that something we want to do for other levels of plans as well, for like the district plan level?
Okay, I think it's a great idea to have some kind of a tracking system. Otherwise, we do all this work, really good work on doing these plans, and then it kind of gets lost in what the goals are. So I think having some kind of a tracking system is really a good idea. Then on number 5, it talks about recommendations in existing underlying sub-area plans. Does that include plans that might have been prepared by other than plan division staff? For example, in the urban forestry plan, there were things that were specific really to the plan department and that the plan commission might have needed to weigh in on. And we actually covered some of those in one of our special meetings. Or the sustainability plan that has some things that are specific to the plan department and plan commission. Are you considering or proposing that those also be looked at for some inclusion into these district plans? And I see that Heather has her hand up, so I think she wants to reply to that. Heather.
Sure. I'm thinking that, depending on the list of ingredients or the table of contents that we settle in on for what we're now calling the district plans, if there are recommendations in other citywide topic area plans like those that you mentioned, we could certainly bring those forward and reinforce them in the district level plans. But I think what we want to be careful of is adding a much longer list of ingredients to these plans, if that makes sense. So if for instance the urban forestry plan speaks for itself, unless there's a real clear place-based recommendation in that plan that needs to be brought into a district sub-area plan, I think we would leave that as is. But if we find opportunities to reinforce adopted recommendations in other plans, we can certainly do that, so long as it's within the realm of the list of components of these district level plans.
I liked your reference to place-based. That certainly makes sense, that the things be place-based. And I see that Commissioner Solheim has her hand up. Commissioner Solheim?
Yeah, just a quick question going back to the tracking that Chair Zellers was asking about. In terms of regular updates on implementation, do you have any general ideas about what that would look like? And I'm thinking about how we get the annual kind of update on the comprehensive plan status that we see at the Plan Commission every year. Would it be something similar to that, perhaps, that could be used for district plans or other plans in the future?
Who wants to take that? Linda, Brian?
I think Heather is jumping in for that.
Okay, Heather.
Well, I'm happy to try, but I would quickly defer to Linda or Brian if they had other thoughts. I think for the district plans, some of the elements that really make sense to track would be major infrastructure investments. And so if one of the recommendations is, a new street connection to link A to B, that is something that I think makes a lot of sense to track. Some other elements such as, are all of the land uses in this sub-area of the city now consistent with the land uses recommended in this plan? I mean, that's a pretty difficult thing to track as development and redevelopment slowly move forward. In some cases, we'll still be setting a very long-term framework for what land use should be where in the city. But I think with regard to anything that involves city investment, city initiatives, so things happening in the right of way, or a new park, for instance, those elements I think make a lot of sense to track and to report back on a regular basis. And then I'll look to Brian, who has a great deep experience with the annual comp plan progress update, and see if you have anything to add to that, Brian.
Yeah, as we talk about this topic, or if we're going to include more detailed recommendations in district plans. We'd want to, one, prioritize the recommendation, estimate the cost, post time frame, note if it would be a kind of a city-led thing or a non-city-led thing, and love to track all those, and then another report to the Plan Commission with other city bodies and also the public. But that reporting is a lot of work and a lot of time. So the comp plan progress update we do is a tremendous amount of time and yes, and very valuable. We think very valuable. I would agree with Heather's suggestion there that we kind of have to maybe set a level as to what we would track and report out on. And I think that all these are trade-offs. So the more things we'd want to track, then that just takes staff time. And so we didn't need to maybe scale back on the recommendations in district plans. And so all these things have trade-offs. The more topics we cover, the longer they'll take. We may not be able to track if we have more recommendations. If we have fewer, then we could track those and could track those higher priority items. I thought Heather's suggestion was a good one. Again, we need to calibrate that kind of with staff capacity in mind. But definitely, at the city, there's been a big push to be more transparent, communicate more on our progress on things, report back, close more of the feedback loops. So that would be our goal. Just a matter if we have the staff time.
Thank you, Brian and Heather. Any further questions on this page? I got one more. Under the sub-area plan potential retirement, it said staff will propose a process to consider plan retirement as part of the resolution authorizing a district plan. When will the Plan Commission be seeing that proposed process?
And so here we tried to under-promise, and hopefully we could over-deliver, where we would have this we would spell out the process as part of the resolution authorizing each district plan. We would know which overlapping plans exist. We could do a cursory review of those, lay out a procedure that also involves the community in terms of reviewing it alongside that district plan process. If we can put together some sort of proposal on plan retirement, then we could do that over the course of the next several months and provide that proposal to the Plan Commission at the next time that we visit this topic. But what we found is that it is difficult. Although we don't want to create a situation where it's just trust us, it'll all work out. We don't want to do that, but it's difficult to do these theoretical things without actually digging into the details of a plan. And so we thought we would do it later with the district plan process, but we can look at the proposal, include it in this, and again, have it reviewed by the Plan Commission the next time that we meet with you all on this topic.
Okay, so
details.
So the concept is to have a general process that would be stepped through for plan retirements. And then when each district comes up, then if there are some plans that then you'd go through that process and recommend some plans for retirement. Is that kind of the general concept?
Yeah, and so kind of leaning back on the text and the comp plan that the Plan Commission helped establish, it talks about creating a process to retire plans, and so we would sooner or with our first district plan, we would then know, okay, what are the underlying plans in this area, and we would sketch out a process where we review and consider retirement of the underlying plans. And that would be a parallel process to the whole district plan being created. And so we're envisioning an 18-month process for each of these district plans being created. That plan process would theoretically parallel that same 18-month time frame. Okay. Because of the comp plan language, we discuss that we would include stakeholders in the question of whether to retire a plan. And so we would use the district plan community engagement process to serve as that platform to consider plan retirement.
Okay.
Since we're contacting all those stakeholders through the district planning process, we would use that to also consider plan retirement. And so one of the first things we would do with the district plan is we would, again, look at the current plans that exist. We would take a cursory look at them. We would probably have a sense, staff would have a sense and propose, Generally, we have these 5 underlying plans, and we'd probably give a general sense of our initial take on the plans. But then, parallel with that district plan process, we would describe what staff is recommending for retirement.
Okay. So the resolution would be authorizing not the district plan, but the initiative to do the district plan. Is that what the resolution is that's being referred to here?
Yeah, so we just like we do a resolution for any new planning process.
Okay.
We kick off a sub-area plan of any type. We do a resolution.
Okay.
It may include a timeline, engagement program. We would at that same time we would propose a outline of the plan retirement process for that geography.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Brian. Alder Heck.
Thank you. Brian, this might just be a semantics question, but you said there would be a parallel process that would take advantage of the existing structure and process that would be going on with the district plan. But I'm wondering if really they're almost one and the same, because I think, as we've discussed, there will be some process of looking at those sub-area plans and deciding what are the relevant items in there that could be pulled into the district plan. And I assume that will then impact the discussion about what can be retired. So I would assume they'd be somewhat integrated at times. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the parallel process being we'd use the same community engagement efforts we would to build the district plans, we would to consider retirement. But yes, it all goes back to point number 5 here, where an analogy for number 5, what are we going to pull out of existing underlying plans is a magnet. There's a magnet that is all the topics included in a district plan. And you have underlying plans. And so whatever underlying plan, district plan match up in terms of topic area, we're theoretically reviewing what's in the existing underlying plan, reviewing that and incorporating that into our district plan. Things that are outside that scope would not get picked up by that magnet. And so those may live on, and that plan may live on after the district plan is created, or that plan may not live on. Maybe that plan is too out of date, doesn't reflect current city policy preferences, or maybe it's all picked up by into the district plan, and there's no need for that underlying plan to exist anymore. It's already been reauthorized, basically readopted. And we may not know until we get 3/4 of the way through the process. And I think we would use the community engagement steps to involve the public in that discussion, as the comp plan suggests, and we use the board committee commission process at the end to make that final call as to whether a plan gets retired or not.
Okay, thanks. I'm envisioning this process, and it sounds good in theory, and I'm all for it so far. But I can just imagine that it will become quite complex as to when you sweep that magnet over, there are going to be disagreements about what should stick and what shouldn't. So it'll be an experience. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Heck. That was a good question and clarification. Anything else on this page? Okay, moving on then.
And so up next, Brianna will an overview of the community engagement that we've outlined for these processes, these plans.
And I just want to jump in here and introduce Brianna. I think that many plan commissioners haven't had an opportunity to meet you, Brianna. Brianna is the newest member of the planning division, having served as an intern now a couple of years ago, and is now a full-time employee in Brian's section, Comprehensive Planning and Regional Collaboration. So welcome, Brianna, and we'll get to introduce you to plan commissioners in person soon, at some point.
Well,
welcome, Brianna. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and happy to be here. So I guess jumping into the public participation, I think a key thing to remember is that this is serving as a general outline that can be customized and adjust throughout the process depending on the area. Following the planning stages, from authorizing the resolution, project scope and schedule, going all the way to number 6, which is implementation and monitoring. We are working through certain levels, that being informing and building awareness externally. That will look like wanting to make sure that the community knows what we're doing and why we're doing it. Starting to getting the community profile, learning more about and identifying key stakeholders and other key connectors to the community. During this process, we'll be using a plethora of strategies to reach community and gather feedback, whether that be social media, around the mailings due to the budget and the areas being so large, flyers, a website, and other outreach methods. Next, we'll also use input and consulting, which will be done internally and externally. So we're learning more about the area and about the character and identity of the community, hiring community partners or community navigators or even social practice artists to do this work. I see a question.
Alder Lemmer.
Thank you. Just a quick question. In the budget for, or the preliminary budget for outreach, I didn't see interpretation and translation included. I was wondering if the print materials, postcards, etc., were planned to be translated into multiple languages, and if the in-person events would have interpretation services.
Brianna?
I would say that we do this regularly now, and so I would imagine so, but I would pass it over to Brian or Linda to confirm that.
Yeah, certainly, Alder Lemmer, and we've definitely discussed this topic. Our main thing that comes out of currently the Department of Civil Rights budget for the translation, and so we were just leaning on their budget for the translation. But certainly that would be translating materials and also have interpretation at meetings.
Okay, super. Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Thanks, Alder Lemmer.
So jumping right back in, we're learning about the area and the character and identity of the community, hiring community partners, community navigators, or even social practice artists that will do this work. Some things to keep in mind while looking at this table is that we use the International Association of Public Participation to create this. We'll also be undergoing a ResJ analysis later this month or in August to make sure that we are always keeping equity in mind and also just looking for ways to be more equitable as we do a public participation. So I'm going to pass it back to Brian for our budget.
And so, on the budget, we mention a few things here. One important thing is this is a typical budget estimate for each district, estimating $40,000 to $50,000 approximately. That's because these districts range in population from about 5,000 people up to about 30,000 people. The downtown area is about 30,000 people. Those numbers will change over time. Some of our lower population ones may be some of the highest in 10, 20, 30 years. But all of the number of people, the volume of interaction changes the price. We're including in here one postcard notification to owners and occupants like we would do for many of our current plans. Maybe we don't do that for all districts, but that's one option there. We're including public meetings to create a district plan. Again, we're envisioning about an 18-month process that could include meetings at 3 different phases. And so if we're in a less populous area, maybe we just have one public meeting for each of those phases. More populous area, maybe we have 2 meetings at each of those phases. So that's where the variability is there. We're going to mention hiring community partners, which has been very effective for us in reaching more diverse populations in our community. We have some money included in here for marketing and also for consultants, if applicable. For example, for the South Madison plan, we did a market study for that area, so we included a line item there. But again, this budget would be variable based on the population in the area, the unique situation that we're kind of doing the planning under. And I also need to mention that our current plan division budget does not accommodate this. We do not have this type of funding to do plans like this. And so it's either need an increased budget, or we would just dramatically scale this back and kind of take a little different approach to these plans. We do think that we're engaging more people. So we're going to cover the whole city, and so we'd love to engage more of the population than we currently do through our current process. That costs money. We also think that this is a good opportunity to have other departments work with us in terms of planning for these areas and promoting city initiatives, and also getting feedback that can feed other initiatives. And so another major emphasis of the city, receive feedback, go out to the community fewer times, get that feedback and distribute it to the relevant departments to make use of that information. Something we did during the comp plan process. Ton of work, but definitely in the long run, hopefully cost effective, and definitely better for residents to be have their feedback used in more than one way. And so here, an opportunity, maybe Parks Division joins us in this effort. They do parks planning at the same scale as these district plans. Maybe we do other city initiatives at the same scale. We can use these meetings to, again, publicize and inform other processes. So that's the thought there, that maybe gain some efficiencies, even though we're engaging more people, and that just has a little more costs involved.
Any questions about the outreach effort or the projected typical budget? Alder Heck.
Thanks. This is more of a comment. I know, Brian, that you have experience with doing this with the comp plan, and that all city outreach is really looking at things through an equity lens, and that's fantastic. But I'm getting these days kind of a visceral negative reaction to postcard notifications, and I understand that is how you reach some people, and I'm sure you're aware of the fact that it also really cuts people out. And so I'm glad to see other options in there, and I hope those can be stressed. I'm thinking in particular of non-property owning people, as well as UW students who, they almost never see those postcards. They just aren't careful about looking through their mail. And so I'm just reiterating that. But I know you all have been doing great things and using community partners and such. So I encourage you to do a lot of that. Thanks.
Thanks, Alder.
And just to jump in briefly, so I appreciate the feedback. And so that if the postcards are not, there's be owners and occupants, but if it's felt that that's not the most equitable way or the best use of our money, then we could use different approaches. So in the campus area, rather than mailing a postcard to all residents, we could work through UW student groups, for example, like ASM, to probably more cost effectively reach more people. But yes, thank you for the comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Spencer.
Thank you. You had mentioned that the city of Milwaukee had done some private fundraising for their initiatives, and that there was some discussion about that. I was just wondering if it was, is it serious discussion? Is that something that you think Madison would really look at? And then I was just curious about some of the private sources of funding in Milwaukee, just out of curiosity.
Linda, I know I think you contacted Milwaukee, I guess, and maybe Heather, any thoughts on how we might handle this? But yeah, maybe Linda, start us off.
Sure.
Linda? Linda, go ahead.
Oh, sure, I'll go ahead. So I have just a brief thing on that. And so the private fundraising, we have not talked about that in depth here for that portion. I think I was more referencing that they have done it, and that they are using community partners as we've done, and using some other types of like neighborhood navigators and that sort of thing, and finding it to be very successful for them. As far as the private fundraising, I'm not sure that would be something we would be doing. We've talked about it in the past, and maybe I would let maybe Heather or Brian speak to that as a possibility for us. They've used foundations in Milwaukee. I forget the names of the different foundations, and that's what I recall.
Okay, Heather or Brian, do you have anything to add?
Well, I can add only that I think, our first ask will be for city funding. I think all in all, if you think citywide initiatives and the cost for consultants and whatnot in a wide variety of city-led initiatives, this would be a very modest ask to add to the planning division's budget. And I don't want to use this as a forum to really focus and make the case for that, but I think there is something to be said for using public funds for public sub-area plans. I think if we're dipping into private funds, we'd want to be very careful that private entities wouldn't even be perceived as having influence over recommendations in our plans. So again, I think this would be a very modest ask for funding an annual line item that could help us with sub-area planning, really help us to extend our reach to support community partners that sometimes today are underpaid or unpaid, but still committed to helping the city reach underrepresented groups. We think that they need to be adequately supported for their support and assistance to the city. So hopefully that clarifies it. Again, I think our first ask will be for public city funding, and then we'll see where that goes. And if we need to think about foundations or other methods, we can do that next.
Thank you, Heather. I saw that Bill Fruling had his hand up, but it's down now. So I'm going to assume that Heather said what he was going to say. If that's not the case, put your hand back up, Bill. Okay, then we will move on. What is next, Brian?
Okay, up next is the district plan, the mock-up and the maps, so the hypothetical plan layout and the maps. And so for this, I'll turn over to Urvashi. We'll kind of run through some of these items here.
Okay, wonderful. Urvashi.
Good evening, everyone. We drafted a plan mock-up for the district plan to kind of visualize what the plan layout and contents would be. And we looked at District C as an example to draft that. So we have this layout here. The document would have a table of contents that's kind of here summarizing all the different things that the district plan would cover, including all the additional information like with tables, maps, figures, with supporting data and appendices. So next page, we'll have an acknowledgement section. And then next page, the introduction would have like a brief summary of this district plan framework, kind of explaining some of the goals of this framework with a map showing all the 13 districts, and then focusing on the district that the plan is being developed for. Next page, we'll have maps with conveying the information. Next page. We'll have the public participation section that's kind of summarizing all the different engagement techniques and methods that would be utilized to get input throughout the planning process with visuals and other information to kind of convey that. Next page. We'll have a background section in the plan that summarizes all the data and information that has been looked at to get more background information about the planning area, things like existing demographics, socioeconomic data, school district boundaries, existing land uses, zoning, transportation, and other information to inform and get information on the background of the area. Next page. The plan's recommendation section would have recommendations on land uses. So here the recommended land use table here is showing the land use categories for the district plan. It also gives information about the density and the building height ranges for those land use categories and how those nest in within the comprehensive plan's generalized future land use categories. Next page. There also will be information or recommendations if there are any specific design guidelines recommendations. If there's a specific district where there's more specific building form and design guidelines recommended, the recommendations would include that. There'll be recommendations on parks and open space, transportation, community facilities, utilities, and stormwater and other physical infrastructure recommendations. Next page. The plan implementation section of the plan would lay out the steps for adoption of the plan. If there are any specific steps relating to proactive rezoning or official mapping, those would be included as well in the implementation. There would be an implementation matrix that would show the plan recommendations, who the lead agency would be to implement the recommendation with a time frame, and also a general cost estimate for that. Next page. So these are the draft maps that we for the mock-up that would go as supporting information. So as I mentioned, a lot of it is looking at the background information like school district, other overlay districts relating to the district to inform us. There'll also be the recommendation maps. So we have a recommendation map included here. That's wait till we reach there. These are the transportation maps. Then moving on to the recommendation, the land use recommendation map. So we have land use recommendation map here. That's also showing the land use categories, and also it will have information on the building height maximums. Next page.
Maybe before we get into the next item is the sequence of our recommended sequence. Maybe we should pause here for a moment and talk about the land uses and the building heights.
And are there any general questions on what has been presented as a structure for the plan, knowing that it's a work in progress, but it sounds like that the intent is to move forward very quickly. So although there may be changes, now's the time to speak up or ask questions too. Are there questions? Commissioner Solheim.
Just to clarify on this land use map, and a couple pages earlier, you had the table where it shows this, housing mix, the different categories, and then the category that translates to for the generalized future land use map. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. We will have this level of specificity in the district plans, and then as that's incorporated, or the land use map and the comp plan is amended, it will be translated into those other categories. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the thought, and we should have probably described that more clearly. But yes, in the district plan, we would have these categories, and so there's more categories than the comp plan GFLU map. And these categories translate into that GFLU map and would be, yes, do exactly what you just described, Commissioner Solheim. So in this case, housing mix 1 translates to low residential in the comp plan. Housing mix 2 translates to low medium residential in the comp plan. Housing mix 3 and 4 translate to medium. And so same procedure as how we've done this in our our recent neighborhood development plans. We create a palette of categories that are consistent, and we stick to those, whether no matter what NDP that you're in, you have that same palette. And that palette of categories translates, is generalized into the comp plan GFLU map. And so as the GFLU map is updated, I'll just scroll up here a little bit, the GFLU map would still have the same categories. We don't need to change the comp plan that we just created 3 years ago. It would have the same categories, and those detailed categories would be translated into these more general, these more broad categories. And we would pull out, when we create this district plan C at some point, we would pull out what's in the comp plan GFLU map and plug back in the results of that district plan. But again, following these same comp plan categories.
Okay, thank you. That was helpful. That's all I have right now.
Thank you. Alder Heck.
Thank you. I'm not sure, but I don't think I saw a zoning map in here because we're really talking about land use. But there was mention of proactive zoning, and is the way that you envision this? Oh, maybe you do have zoning. I don't know. Is the way that you envision this? Oh, you do have it. Okay, thanks. But is the way that you envision the process that the generalized land use map that came out of this process would be the basis for a set of recommendations about proactive zoning that should be pursued? Or proactive zoning, as we all know, is a little bit messy. How do you picture proactive zoning coming out of this?
Yeah, so we would, we're still kind of getting our feet underneath ourselves with the proactive rezoning, but we would use what we've learned from Milwaukee Street Special Plan, Odana, Oscar Mayer, and on this map or a different map, we would likely outline where we would be suggesting a proactive rezoning change and doing what we've learned, which is we need to keep stakeholders apprised of that proposal even during the plan development process. So right now, when we create a new plan, we'll go in and some plans that we create, we'll go into the comp plan GFLU map and they'll outline, okay, we would change this area from X to X, this from X to X. We could do that same thing, indicating the proposed proactive rezone areas. I haven't been involved in those plans of proactive rezones yet, so maybe a colleague has some more thoughts, but the goal will be identify zoning and also possible official mapping for streets and other things like we're doing with the data plan that's going through the process right now.
Heather, did you want to add anything or?
Well, I agree with everything that I just heard from Brian. And I would just say that, yes, this is actively on your radar as plan commissioners within some of the planning sub-area plans that we're working on now and bringing to. And I think what we're learning together collectively is that we may be very selective in the areas that are recommended for proactive rezoning, for official mapping. You know, we want to really home in on the highest priority areas for those changes. That's the takeaway that I have here midway through 2021. And, we're all still learning together as we move forward with Oscar Mayer. And then after that, the Odana area implementation tools, we consider them the proactive rezonings and official mapping. But I think if things go as they have thus far, I think we continue to be pretty selective and pick the highest priorities for those recommendations.
Okay. Thank you, Heather and Brian. Anything else, Alder Heck?
Just a clarification. So you envision those potential proactive rezonings coming out of the planning process?
We would envision those, the way they're happening with the Odana area plan is probably the best example where there's clarity within that planning process that these are the recommended areas for proactive rezoning, for official mapping. The actual action to proactively rezone or officially map comes later, sometimes 6 or more months later. But the planning process itself does include clear recommendations so that nobody's completely caught off guard by those actions at a later date.
Okay, thank you. As you, in so many words, you said stay tuned, and I like that. Okay, we'll see how it goes. Thanks.
Thanks, Alder. I don't see any other raised hands. One thing that I want to bring up, and there's not a perfect time really to bring it up, but I kind of alluded to it earlier. One area of concern that I have that it doesn't feel to me like we are adequately addressing is under really our comp plan culture and character and some other work that we have done as a city. It doesn't seem like that we're kind of recognizing it within this, and I think we should. So let me just say a couple more things. So under culture and character, strategy 2C says, identify ways to retain older buildings and places that contribute to the special character of an area or are associated with diverse cultures through the adoption of sub-area plans prior to the redevelopment pressures. And as came up either at our last plan commission meeting or the prior one, I don't remember, we're losing those kinds of places and buildings at a really rapid rate, a couple of dozen within the last about 18 months. So my question is, since we won't really be doing sub-area plans to any great extent, is there a way that we can implement or have better covered that strategy within the district plan? So that's one question, but I want to follow it up by something that's very closely associated. And that is, there isn't currently a map, and Brian has indicated that we could probably add such a map that would include the underrepresented community special places. We did a very big effort and initiative to survey special places to unrepresented, basically underrepresented communities. And to me, this district plan is a place for kind of recognition, integration, and communication of elements that that impact places. And I liked Heather's earlier reference to saying something about place-based, and these are special places. So we seem to, it's easier to do, and I understand that, for things like transportation or natural features. But it seems to me that we need to, if we want to have a really robust and inclusive kind of district plan, we need to figure out how to address these kinds of more challenging and sticky issues. So my question is, and I realize that you may need more time to think about this. I did raise these questions with Brian and Heather in advance of this, and I don't know if you've had enough time to really think about it. Brian did say that we could add certainly a map about those places that were identified in the underrepresented survey. To me, that's wonderful. It's necessary, but not really sufficient. So, Heather, I see that you've got your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair Zellers. And I want to also mention that Bill Fruling is here and may have ideas to add, certainly. But, similar to my response about the proactive rezoning and official mapping, I would say that if there are, critical implementation items that we find related to historic preservation, such as pursue landmark status for this building or pursue a local historic district for this area, I think that those recommendations are appropriate to have within the implementation framework of plans done at this level. And to me, these still are sub-area plans. They're larger, they're more, more general, but they are sub-area plans. And I think that they could include, implementation recommendations, certainly related to historic preservation. And so that's a general answer, but Bill, I don't know if you have some other thoughts on how these could interface with, the work that's already been recommended in the historic preservation plan, the citywide. historic
Bill.
preservation plan.
Thank you, Heather. Bill, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I see this kind of structure with the district plans as a way to more quickly and more comprehensively identify potential historic resources across the whole city. So in addition to the historic resources that were identified in our year-old historic preservation plan, those were specific places that were identified. But the historic preservation plan also has another important recommendation, and that is a strategy that breaks the entire city, including some more of our peripheral areas that have never had any kind of inventory of historic resources. To break those down, kind of like we're talking about in the district plan, but it breaks the entire city down into, I want to say, about a dozen different big chunks to do and recommends a priority to do historic, survey of historic resources in those areas. So, all that was done before this was ever really developed to this point, this concept of doing these district plans. So in my mind, if we can cover the whole city with these district plans in like 10 years, we'll have a very rich and comprehensive inventory of an updated inventory of historic resources. So I think it's probably more a matter of adjusting the boundaries that were suggested in the historic preservation plan to the district plans. If that made sense.
Thank you. I'm just going to follow it up with kind of an observation and comment. Some cities are more proactive in actually doing landmarking. And I don't know whether Madison would ever go in that direction. But right now, we can survey and identify and demolish. And so I would really like to see some thought go into and how it's not survey, identify, and demolish. Is there a way that we can do a better job of protecting special places? So I'm not asking for an answer here right now, but I do think that it's an issue that we need to address. So with that, unless people really are dying to say something about that, which would be fine too. Seeing no raised hands, we will move on.
Yes, I just want to say that all this feedback is very helpful to help us calibrate, think about topics, the level of recommendation, how we might handle them, and appreciate this and really helping to craft this proposal, which is very helpful to us. Want to jump back to the land use map, and then I'll hand it back to Urvashi for the sequence of the plans. But just want to touch on the building heights question briefly here. And so, just like in the downtown plan, we included more maximum building heights. Oden area plan includes some maximum building heights. We would love to use building height as more of the guiding factor because it's more understandable, certainly. And so I think we probably have a layer of density. You've seen a density here, but also building heights. We can keep working on how we'd kind of craft that and have those two work together. We think that building heights is probably more important in some districts than others, and in parts of some districts than others. There may be some value, since we are covering the whole city, to rely more on the parameters that go along these housing mixes, which have density and building height. But certainly, if there's areas that we want to identify the building height maximum, we should do that, and we may want to either using these housing mixes or something else. We may, in some areas, may want to identify building height minimum, and that may be a more important factor than maximum in some areas. Not all areas are like the downtown or have that same small parcel size. Everyone wants to build as much as possible. That's not quite the case in all parts of the city, but we do want to introduce the building height in there and use building height as much as we can, because that's just a little easier terminology and for things that people to relate to. So folks have any follow-up thoughts now or later, just let us know and we'll incorporate that into our details here.
Does anybody have any comments about building heights? I would say I agree with your building height minimums too, which I don't think, I don't recall seeing that addressed. I think that is really important because in some areas, we want to see the density on, the transportation corridors. And again, it seems like we approve too many like one-story buildings in areas where we're hoping to see density. So I do think that that's something that we should probably include. So that the whole thing with heights was one of the questions at the end, and I will just indicate that Brad Cantrell unfortunately could not be with us, but he did go through this thoroughly, as I'm sure all commissioners understand how he goes through things thoroughly. And his comment on the maximum heights was suggesting that maximum heights maps be reserved for certain areas of the district plan. He said that he liked what staff recommended in the Odana area plan, and that he suggests that a similar strategic approach to maximum height would be most appropriate. So I'd really like to find out how other commissioners feel about that. Commissioner Solheim.
Yes, if we're reviewing this question now, my thought on the maximum heights, and I agree, I like the idea of minimum heights. I hate approving a one-story building around transit corridors in particular. But I agree that I would not be in favor of maximum height maps throughout an entire area. It seems like we could miss out on specific opportunities or parcels that may make sense for a larger building, and also don't want to, use staff time to individually assess every parcel and what makes sense for that. So I agree. I think it should be reserved for sort of strategic areas.
Okay, I am seeing a couple of other head nods. Could I see maybe? Yeah, okay. That seems to be the consensus. If I'm misreading, raise your hand and let me know. Okay, very good. Then let's move on.
So for this next section, Urvashi will run through our proposed sequencing, and maybe you have two screens in front of you, or you can go split screen, but Urvashi will run through this, but I'm going to scroll down to the map that has the map of all these so you can see where we're talking about as we run through this. And so hopefully this works for everyone as Urvashi starts us off. Go ahead.
So Brian, can you tell us your method for proposing these specific district boundaries? Because I have heard comments from some people that that they questioned what the boundaries are, either because they don't include things they think they should, or include things that they don't think they should because they're so diverse or whatever. So could you give information about how you came up with these?
Sure. And so, yeah, we spent quite a bit of time on the boundaries. It's a kind of a difficult puzzle to put together here. And so hopefully what we propose is good. We'll appreciate any feedback. When we visited the Plan Commission last December, we actually had 12 areas, and we just basically this area that's now J&K was one large one, and just felt like that was just too large for to do a plan for. And so we're now at 13 districts. Generally, what we looked at as we were establishing the boundaries, and so really the only thing that's changed, I think, is the J&K area since we last visited this, but we tried to follow, first and foremost, major barriers. So you have the Beltline, for example. There's not a lot of relationship between land uses across the Beltline. Same thing with the Interstate I-39. We're using rail corridors, just things that are just major boundaries that we would not care as much about what happened across the street. So if we do a plan for one area, we wouldn't care if it impacted what's across the street or across that barrier. So certainly barriers. We did try to follow census tracts to a large degree. Tracts they follow the same thing, but we'll be using census tracts to pull that American Community Survey, the ACS data for demographics. So we want to have our data sources match up with our planning areas like we do now. South Madison plan, for example, I think is like maybe two tracks or so. We tried to kind of cover different vintages. And so when we were looking at splitting up this area, and so both L and M are pretty large areas. M is a very large district. We could have gone east-west and kind of followed a rail corridor through here and made this a district. But then we now have 19, 40s, 50s, 60s areas, along with the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s area that may not have as much in common. So in this case, we went north-south to keep that area contiguous. Area M has a little more in common. Those are the major factors. We looked at population. We looked at projected population growth that would come out of these. But I think really the main thing was barrier, because we wanted to make sure that if we do a plan for District C and then don't come back 5 years later to do Area B, that what we do in C wouldn't impact B, or vice versa, B wouldn't impact C. We can make independent decisions as we go along. We have talked about, in some cases, maybe we do 2 plans at once. We went from 12 to 13. We also went to letters to not cause confusion with Alder districts. But we're proposing right now that J and K, although very large geography right now, lower in the population category, proposing that J and K actually be done through the same planning process, but create 2 different plan documents. And we may want to do other areas together as well, in a simultaneous process. So like F and G, for example, I think of the downtown and East Isthmus as having a fair amount of interrelationship. Maybe we do F and G at the same time. Maybe we don't. But those are the main things. We wanted to have each district plan be somewhat independent of what would happen around it, so that the decisions weren't kind of contingent on what we might do across the street. And so this map kind of shows existing plans. It also, we break the NDPs are kind of one area, and the interior plans the other. This map right here might show a little bit too on some of those land use breaks. And so the area between D and E, we're using, I think it's Arboretum Drive, and basically the whole Arboretum. That's just an area that there's not much of a land use relationship on either side of that line there. And so that was the overall thought. And we've refined these internally, but if folks have questions on these areas, questions or feedback, we'd appreciate that. But those are the overall goal.
Alder Lemmer, did you have a question or comment? I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. Just a super quick comment. Looking at these districts, it felt very natural to me thinking about the dynamics of my aldermanic district, which is split up into 3 of these letters. One portion of my district has much more mature neighborhoods that are 50 plus years old, and those are in L. And then I've got a portion of my district where most of the development is 25 years old or newer, and that's M. And then K has very little development so far, but it has a neighborhood development plan in place. So those how these were divided up, compared to just how things are in my district, it seemed to make a lot of sense to me.
So I'm going to ask Alders this question. One of the comments I made was, don't do simultaneous planning of any areas so that an alder had more than one going on at a time. That's the way I feel from having been an alder. I wouldn't want 2 going on at the same time in my district. And I'm wondering if other alders feel the same way. So Alder Lemmer.
That makes a ton of sense. Yes,
okay.
Absolutely.
Alder Heck, do you have a comment about that?
Well, from what Brian hinted at, it sounded to me like they could be going on at the same time, or even potentially have some combined components, which would, if that was possible, I don't know, that could help alleviate some of the problem with stretching alders thin. But I tend to agree it could be pretty complicated if there were two totally disconnected processes going on at the same time.
Okay. I just kind of wanted to, for them to hear from current alders rather than someone who was looking backward. So, okay, thank you. Go ahead then, Brian or Urvashi was next.
We were going to cover the sequence that we're proposing for creation of the district plans. We used some different criterias in prioritizing which plans should go first in the sequence. So we looked at what the schedule is for the CDBG plan, so they get the district plan and the CDBG plans could sync up. We also looked at what existing plans the districts have, how old they are. Also, if the area doesn't have any plans in place, and also other projects like BRT and other considerations in coming up with this initial sequence. So as we mentioned that we are proposing two simultaneous district plans be developed in the 18-month timeframe. So the first two district plans we're proposing be created in the 2022, starting next year, 2022 to 23 timeframe are District I and District D. So District I on the map, it's on the east side. It's covering the East Town Mall area. District D is in the near west side, kind of the Monroe Street corridor, University Avenue area. The next two district plans we are proposing be created in 2024-25 timeframe are District C and District L. So District C is the example we did for the plan mock-up on the west side covering the West Town Mall area. And District L is kind of on the southeast side of the city, Stoughton Road, Cottage Grove Road area. The next two district plans we're proposing for 2025, 2026 timeframe are District B and District H. So District B is on the southwest side of the city, also covers the Allied Dunsmarsh area. District H is north side of the city, North Port Sherman corridor. The next two district plans we are proposing from 2027 to 2028 timeframe are District F and District G. So District F is the downtown area, kind of following the downtown plan boundaries. And District G is adjacent to it, kind of the Cap East near East Side District. The next two district plans we are proposing for 2028 to 2029 are District A and District M. So District A is on the far west side of the city, kind of the western edge of the city, and District M is on the kind of far southeast side of the city, the southeastern edge. The next district plans we are proposing for 2030 to 2031 are District E and District J and K. So District E is covering the south side of the city, and District J and K are on the kind of the northeast and eastern edge of the city. We are proposing that J and K be developed through the same planning process, since they're adjacent to each other and also have the least amount of residential development right now. And Chair Zellers, we did look at which districts would possibly have a conflict with the same alderman district. It would be District F and G. They would have a conflict, and District J and K would have the same alder. So that would have a conflict with the sequence.
If J and K are going about it as essentially one planning process, I don't know that that would be a particular problem personally. And Alder Heck can speak up. If I were still Alder for those areas, I would not want G and F going on at the same time. But Alder Heck, what's your thought?
I was just going to remind everyone that redistricting will also occur soon, so we don't really know. But I tend to agree that the two processes that are not connected to each other would be a challenge. It depends on what it consists of, but I already have almost no free evenings between Monday and Thursday, so it'd be a challenge.
Okay, so I would urge that you look at rescheduling G and maybe switch it with M or something like that. Anyway, but so think about that. Okay, any other comments on the schedule? Okay, Alder Heck, you have something else?
Yeah, just a quick question. I don't. Maybe this was addressed somewhere in the materials, but I don't remember. Will this schedule impact the regular comp plan update schedule? Every 10 years we update the comp plan. It sounds like the land use map will be updated on the fly essentially from here on out. Is there any other aspect of the comp plan that would be impacted by this?
Yeah, so this would replace, and yes, I would update the GFOU map on the fly. The main thing is the one thought is that so we take 18 months to create a district plan for the first time. So we're doing a lot. We're creating a new plan, reviewing underlying plans. That could take time, 18 months, which we think is doable. That'll even be able to do more work in that time frame. After that, we would update a plan over about a 1-year process. And so our goal was to update these plans every 10 years. Every 10 years, each of these district plans would be updated. The thought there is that if we update the comp plan every 10 years, this would be more so the goals, strategies, and actions in the text part of the comp plan. But every 10 years, we put a new comp plan in place that kind of sets our overall goals, our priorities. So those new goals and priorities would then inform those district plan updates for the next 10 years. And so every 10 years, they're informed by that overarching comp plan guidance. That's the goal. If we can't hit the 10-year cycle, if it's more than that, then some plans won't have the benefit of that. But otherwise, yeah, the GFLU, this process kind of replaces that citywide GFLU process, which was difficult in the last comp plan update. It's tough when we ask people to do things for the whole city. We only usually get fewer perspectives when we do that. But that's the goal, the 10-year update cycle. That's what's really driving that goal for the 10 years. If we can't meet the 10 years, then we'll just it'll be something different. But yeah, we think we'll continue to do the comp plan on an every 10-year basis. In reality, we did a plan in 2006, and then again in 2018, it took us 12 years. So maybe they are in sync if it's a 12-year cycle.
Thanks. You're reiterating that the comp plan is doing a lot of the driving of these district plans was useful. I can imagine as you get further out from the creation of that version of the original version of the comp plan that the tail could wag the dog a little bit, but I appreciate what you said. That clarified things. Thanks.
Anything else? Okay, then moving on.
So up next is, we'll jump back to the text part here. We just ran through the sequence. So now let's turn over to Linda to cover points 11 and 12, which is integrating a CDBG plan, and then also the criteria for undertaking a summary plan outside the district plan process. I'll turn it over to you, Linda.
Yes, thank you, Brian. So we will still continue to do plans in smaller areas where residents generally have low to moderate incomes. These are referred to as our CDBG plans, as they're partially funded and implemented with community development block grant funds.
Linda, could I ask,
yes.
before you get into the substance of this, so given that there are large areas, I believe, of the city that would fall within the requirement of low to medium income, how do you select the areas that you're going to do a CDBG plan for?
Mm-hmm. So there are a number of different criteria that we use, and we just went through this process because we were queuing up, our next plan that will be funded in part by CDBG. Definitely, we have to follow the federal guidelines for low to moderate income, and those designations are shown on the map right here with the census tracts overlaid. So these are the people who are living. 51% or more people living with low to moderate incomes as defined by the federal government. And also the Dane County median income is figured into that as well. So we work with our CDBG staff to create these maps because they've got data that we have to draw from as well. And we also work with our CDBG staff and to do that just recently to determine where we would like to plan next for these areas. Certainly look at planning area opportunities, and in the case of what's called the Carpenter Mayfair plan that we would like to get going next year, the BRT line is running right along East Washington Avenue, or will be coming up here in 2024. And so Carpenter Mayfair area, which is up East Washington Avenue, adjacent to what the East Town Mall plan is, that boundary. That area is, it's got that BRT opportunity coming up. We want to make sure that we plan, density along that corridor, or take up that opportunity with BRT. We also have the Rindell Community Center coming up through the library in that area. So we want to take and build off of that opportunity with our plan. We have the Truax area and the Madison East Community Center there as well that we want to fold into the plan. Number of schools in that area. And so those are some of the factors we looked at in making it so that plan raised up.
So the city has flexibility to choose any of the areas that are within the low to medium, and yes. Is staff primarily driving that process in terms of what is selected for a CDBG plan?
Yes, I mean, we do have to, create an authorizing resolution, but yes, staff is driving. We'll put forward some options within our staff group that we decide upon, but then we do have to go to the CDBG committee, for example, with that authorizing resolution for the plan process.
Okay. And you include some information like what you just shared with us in terms of what's driving the selection.
Yes, that's true.
Okay. Thank you. That was helpful.
You're welcome. Not a problem. So what we're talking about with this plan framework proposal is that we would integrate the CDBG planning processes with the district plan processes. So that means Area I would be taken up along with the Carpenter Mayfair CDBG plan starting next year. And what we would do is we would integrate the CDBG plan with a rolling start, meaning that we would start it slightly ahead, 3 to 6 months ahead of the district plan process. And part of the reason to do that is because, as Brianna was describing earlier, well, she was describing for district plans, but what we do with CDBG plans is create a community profile. We want to get to know the area real well. We want to know who lives there, what are the community assets. We want to build relationships with stakeholders because our CDBG plans tend to be kind of more people-focused planning processes. And so that takes a little bit longer to kind of get going with that community profile that we do in the relationship building. And then that district plan would start, about 3 to 6 months later. We would join together again for the larger systems planning, the CDBG and the district plan. So the land use planning, transportation, parks and open space, and those other systems planning efforts would join. The two processes would join. And the CDBG process would continue on in parallel. It would continue to inform the district plan. We would, as we do, emphasize those people and place topics like displacement, affordable housing, and affordable commercial spaces, and to some degree, community services. More detailed ped and bike facilities. That's something we often do with the CDBG plans, making sure that people have adequate, facilities that they can walk and bike safely and conveniently. Traffic calming often comes up. So we kind of drill down a little bit more deeply into these topics and would continue to do that. We would propose to continue to create, a CDBG plan document and a district plan document. And again, that CDBG focuses on that smaller geography at a greater level of detail. Both of the plans would go through the city's regular boards, commissions, and committee review processes at the same time. Although, we may have different boards and committees and commissions reviewing the different plans to some extent. And then we're proposing that the Plan Commission reconcile suggested changes that are not consistent across the two. If they do, we want to make sure that one doesn't conflict with the other in the end of the day. And then, of course, the council would be the ultimate adopter of those plans.
Any questions about the CDBG process and how it works with the concept of the district plan? So CDBG has been around for quite a while, and I'm assuming that we don't have any reason to think that that might change or that funding might not be going forward.
We don't at this time. So we're fully on board with continuing. Well, maybe I shouldn't speak out of turn, but that's what this plan framework process has been talking about, is continuing forward with the CDBG processes, and we have not been informed of changes through CDBG office on that either.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then we can move on to criteria for undertaking a sub-area plan outside of a district plan process. Shifting to scheduling these district plans, including with, integrating the CDBG every 2 years is, it will limit our ability to do other types of sub-area plans. But what we're proposing here is that there can be situations, we think, where a critical need or opportunity would arise that would warrant creating another type of sub-area plan. And we're looking at criteria such as providing recommendations for an unforeseen or urgent need not addressed in the district plan, or one that wouldn't be addressed until the next district plan update. That could be, up to 10 years from that point. An example is the Oscar Mayer plan. We took advantage of that opportunity to go forward with that plan when that redevelopment came forward. We want to reserve the opportunity if there's an equity concern or a different need in the community that we see arising, and take that on in a timely manner with a plan, leverage funding opportunities that might arise, and that might, we think of the BRT station area planning grant that came forward, and other types of funding opportunities that might come up that would, we would feel it would be a good time to move forward on a smaller area plan.
So I am going to ask commissioners, this is one of the questions that staff was particularly, they've heard feedback on a lot of different things, but this was one thing that staff was particularly interested in. Given limited staff resources, does the commission have advice, guidance on criteria to consider other sub-area planning efforts outside of the district plan framework? So is there differences from what's being suggested here, other ideas, or are commissioners pretty much in harmony with this? Alder Heck.
Thanks. I would just recommend that we be as specific as possible in these criteria. I know it's impossible to think of everything, but there are going to be 20 alders, most likely, and each having 14,000 constituents or something. And I would think these criteria could be put to the test quite often. So I think it's not that I disagree with these at all. It's just that I think I would think it through pretty carefully and in developing these. And yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Other comments? I would just share with you what Commissioner Cantrell said. He said that I think the criteria that staff has suggested is appropriate. So he was in alignment with what was being suggested. Commissioner Solheim.
I agree that with these suggestions, and kind of related to the timing and also the mention of funding opportunities, I would just kind of reiterate the importance of having planned updates within that 10-year period. I know that, just personally, there's a lot of funding sources that I've applied for development projects that require an applicable area plan that is no older than 10 years. So, I think this is a great move towards ensuring that we have fewer areas in the city that could not meet that if it came up. So just really more of a comment than anything.
Thank you, Commissioner. I understand what Alder Heck was saying. That said, I do think there needs to be a little bit of flexibility in here because we can't anticipate everything. And I think staff have practiced saying that's not in our work plan. So if need be, I think they probably would, they would say that if there was some kind of pressure. But I think there needs to be a little bit of flexibility in there because we can't anticipate everything. So I'm satisfied with what you've got here as criteria. Any other comments or concerns about the criteria that are being suggested here, knowing that, these could change a bit? Okay, then let's move on.
Okay, and then, so yeah, we can anticipate what might happen in the future. We can look back, and so we look back in these three examples of sub-area plans and how we might have handled these three things, these three plans, actually 4 plans, if we were doing the working on this planning framework. And so the first item, the 2020 Oscar Mayer Special Area Plan, that's one that was sudden, and that was a very acute change with the closing of Oscar Mayer. I was trying to think of other examples that might happen in the city, and I don't know if we ever would have come across something like that. But in this case, we think that if we had this planning framework, let's say that we had just done a district plan for this area. I think this is F. This is the East Isthmus one that comes up here. Let's say we just did a district plan for this area in 2025, and something happened in 2027, and we knew it was going to be 8 years until we get back to this area. We wanted to make a change to the land use and street plan to reflect something happening, the closing of the plant. We could then do a very focused special area plan that could include some updates to that district plan that would focus on those topics. Maybe it really just focuses on land use and transportation. It could be a very focused special area plan. We do that plan, we adopt it, and those changes go immediately into the district plan. So we always get a district plan in sync with everything else going on. And then for the other aspects of the plan that may not be covered by a district plan, which in this case might be, as we mentioned, some of the economic development or community development issues. This might be related to the job losses and opportunities to bring in new businesses or retrain workers, whatever it might be. Those can be covered under some sort of other, not yet defined strategic plan for this area. And this is something that Minneapolis is doing. What they've done, as Linda went through the examples, they're not doing special area plans anymore for development review purposes. They have their comp plan, which includes the future land use map, built form map that provides all the guidance on the physical development. And then what they're doing then with their now available staff time is they're doing strategic plans for certain parts of the city. And so they're looking at either corridors or certain neighborhoods and doing more detailed plans, maybe more like a 5-10 year planning horizon to talk about recommendations for that smaller geography. So maybe we would do something like that. We don't know what the form would be, but again, we would probably, rather than wrapping up the whole topic in a special area plan, we would have a more focused special area plan and have another summary report that covers the other areas that would not be covered by that district plan. For the Cosgrove Road Activity Centers plan, which looked at different nodes along Cosgrove Road, we think that could be largely picked up. Those recommendations would be picked up by a district plan. And again, I have the benefit of being updated every 10 years. And then for the mall plans, so Dan Area Plan and Greater Easttown Special Area Plan, we think that generally the topics in those draft plans would be covered by a district plan. And so again, those would be covered by that and they would be updated. So we would not do a special area plan for Dana, Easttown, or Cosgrove Road. And so really more the Oscar Mayer, as we mentioned up above, whether we're trying, covering an unforeseen urgent need, addressing equity, or leveraging a funding opportunity. Those would be the three things that would lead us to move outside of the district plan process and the combo CDBG district plan process. And again, as Commissioner Solheim mentioned, if we have a process every 10 years to update it, we're going to update our way out of a lot of problems that we have now. One example of tremendous inefficiency was what you all just reviewed was the Hanson NDP amendment, the area along Portage Road as you're heading out of town, north of Easttown there. We had a out-of-date Hanson NDP, I think it was from about maybe 2000 or so. We haven't updated it because there hasn't been the need to update it. We get a request to change the land use in a certain segment of Portage Road opposite the American Center. We want to be responsive to our customers, and so we move forward with a small plan amendment for a small area that takes, quite honestly, as much time as half a plan somewhere else, and it only covers a couple hundred acres. And so that is very inefficient. But we want to be responsive to our customers, and we do that process. Under this scenario, we would not do that Hanson NDP amendment because we would come back every 10 years and update the recommendations. Those recommendations for that segment of Portage Road would have reflected our current thinking, and where in this case it did not reflect current thinking. It reflected year 2000 thinking. So hopefully that provides some example. And I think overall, the more we include in these district plans, it's going to squeeze out capacity to do other things, and that's what may be okay. If we stick to that 10-year cycle, we're going to be reaping the benefits of that frequency and that currency of our plans.
How is the town of Madison being considered in this? Simply as part of one of the districts?
Yeah, and so just jump down to that map real quick. And so yeah, this map includes everything that is. I guess that kind of go up this map right here, the GFLU map. This map includes these boundaries. The blue outlines include everything that is in the city or we think might be in the city. We don't know exactly our boundaries, but this includes everything. And so this will include the town of Madison area that will come into the city. And we already have, I believe, we already have recommendations for that because we've known about that plan attachment now for some time.
Okay.
That will
Okay.
come into Area E.
Any other questions about this topic? Okay, moving on.
Okay, and then to the next two points are regarding the interface with the comprehensive plan, which is something that came up. Quite a few commissioners brought that up at the December meeting on this topic, and so we wanted to kind of outline how this could play out. And so this first section would be better handled with a map or a graphic. I think we can do that next. We're just trying to kind of get some shape to this overall proposal, but we kind of run through how the GFLU map is updated. And so in 2018, we adopted our comp plan. Typically, what we've been doing, so we had a 2006 comp plan, we had a 2018 comp plan. We were doing kind of like a mid update. So back in 2012, we took our GFLU map, we incorporated sub-area plans that were adopted between 06 and 2012. We incorporated those. We put a call to the community to ask for requested change to the GFLU map. We wanted to open up that opportunity. And so we did that in 2012. I think we would do that again. So in this case here, we adopted a plan in 2018. Where, as Urvashi mentioned, we would do a couple of plans in the 2022-2023 timeframe. So now we're starting to create some plans. And as I mentioned before, when we create a plan, we take the GFLU map, we pull out the old chunk and plug in the new information with the new district plan. So we're adding chunks of updated info to the GFLU map. If we decide to do so, in 23 or so, a couple of years from now, we might also pull in those other sub-area plans that have not been reflected yet in the GFLU map. So pull in the, I think that would include the Oscar Mayer plan, pull in the Triangle Monona Bay plan, South Madison, Odana, Easttown. We'll pull those in so that our GFLU map reflects those sub-area plans that have been adopted. So now we're updating it through the district plan process and to catch up other sub-area plans. And then we continue on. So we're, again, adding more new chunks to it. And then eventually, we've created a GFLU map based on all these district plans. And then every year or so thereafter, we're adding in a new district plan update or not. And so that map is continually being updated. And really, it's updated on a yearly basis, theoretically. And if we decide to do that, this is a question that we can discuss. Right now, we kind of wait like 5 years and we pull in sub-area plan that have been adopted in the GFLU map. If we want to have our GFLU map reflect the current district plans at all times, there's some benefit to that. The downside is we need to follow the comp plan procedures. These are those procedures here. We would need to follow what's in state law, which is basically adopt some participation procedures, do some notification, folks like quarry owners are one of them, do a public hearing. This could be done again alongside the district plan process. We would need to have the council adopt an ordinance. We would update the map and then email that map updates out to area government entities. So there's some administrative steps there if we want to have our GFLU map at all time reflect updated district plan maps. If we want to say do it updates every couple of years or be a little bit of a lag, we can decide how to handle this. But it's all basically weighing notification process versus having an up-to-date map, basically.
Questions or comments about this? Commissioner Solheim.
Just on this last portion that you were just reviewing, I guess I know it's some additional steps, but I would lean towards kind of immediately updating the GFLU map while it's fresh in people's minds, especially if there's a portion of that area that we're looking at for proactive rezoning. I would want that to be consistent with the map.
Other comments or any questions? I agree with Commissioner Solheim. I think that makes sense. I'm seeing a couple of yes Anybody disagree with that? If so, raise your hand. Okay. Okay, looks like there's consensus on that. Let's move on.
And then just this last section here is, sorry for jumping around, but zoom out a little bit here. We just have the proposed schedule for establishing this framework. We were plugging away at the end of last year. We took a little bit of a hiatus first quarter of 21. Now we're back to this. I think we'll maintain our intensity we've had the last few months on this project. And so this morning we met with a group, the mayor, it's called the mayor's planning team, the mayor and other city staff to share our latest proposal, get feedback. And the same thing with the Plan Commission meeting this evening. Up next, one of our major milestones, we wanted, as we shape this a little more, we want to do a racial equity, social justice analysis of this framework to make sure that we're centering equity in this shift. We want to continue to use that information and other feedback, like from this meeting tonight, to continue to refine this. We have a long list of things now from this meeting that we can refine and continue to shape this proposal. We do want to get this in front of the Common Council members. We haven't done that yet. So whether it's through like a Common Council Executive Committee meeting or the full council, or as the mayor suggested this morning, maybe we visit some other boards, commissions, committees, of course, the next few months to get feedback from other kind of stakeholders' perspectives, that those also would include alders as well. And then the thought is that by the November-December timeframe, we would have a more refined proposal, and we would then consider a resolution that would basically look for support of the plan framework, and we would have that reviewed by boards, commissions, committees, and certainly the Plan Commission guiding us there. And then after that, we do have in our work plan that we're trying to finalize right now. Second quarter start for that district plan I, that begin again the combo CDBG district plan with area D, that near west side area, starting thereafter. We have a long ways to go, but with this feedback, again, I think we can start to shape this even more over the course of the coming months. And maybe another question with the Plan Commission would be how do we want to bring this back? We bring it back to the November-December time frame. If there's a desire, we could even have a more brief presentation at a meeting before that, if folks wanted to see an interim product before we get to that November-December time frame. Any thoughts or questions?
Alder Heck.
Thanks. My inclination is that all alders need to see this at some point, and CCEC is fine, but if it could be a presentation at a Common Council meeting, early in the process, I think that would be helpful, because it's just going to be a lot of information for alders and a fair number who are pretty involved in planning efforts and development. So I'd say the committees are not a bad idea. I realize that would make the process a little longer, but I'm thinking about, well, CDBG would be good, I suppose, to check in with them, but also TPPB and any other committees that have a planning focus could be helpful just to give a presentation to them. But mostly I'm worried about alders, making sure they're familiar with it before they're in any sort of decision-making mode. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alder Heck. I would really agree with that, and maybe even individual meetings with some alders if they are interested in doing that, because this is significant. So, Heather.
Thank you. I just had a question to Alder Heck's recommendation, and I think we can definitely go a number of ways with this, but given the agendas at council and the length of time that it might take to convey this framework, do you think that it could be helpful to, I'm trying not to make this a leading question, but do you think that it could be helpful to create a presentation that alders could view in advance, or do you think that it would be best to make sure that we get on an agenda and have, at least a half an hour or sufficient time to be live on a council agenda, or both?
Alder Heck?
I suppose, based on my past experience with the recently passed zoning ordinance changes, I'd say more is better. More options are better than fewer. So it could be both. I do think that a video presentation or the like was very helpful for that discussion. But I'm afraid what Chair Zeller said might be the case too, that some individual meetings might be helpful too.
Alder Lemmer.
Thank you. I just wanted to wholeheartedly agree with what Alder Heck said and with what Chair Zeller said. And I think a pre-recorded presentation is good, but doing that and getting on an agenda and providing a presentation to all alders would be really good, just to cover yourself.
Anything else on that topic? Okay. Moving on. Oh, we're to the questions. So question number one, we didn't specifically get consensus on that. Is the commission generally comfortable with the scope and level of detail proposed for the district plans? And I brought up one thing that I'm not comfortable with. I don't recall hearing anything else that commissioners expressed. Okay, Alder Heck.
Thanks. I think there were a few things that came up that make me feel like it would be a good idea for us to get some kind of an interim update, just addressing the questions that came up and any other updates, or as things mature with this. So I think some form of interim update at a regular plan commission meeting would be helpful.
Very good. I think that's a great idea to do that. Right. Our next, yeah. Okay. I think that's an excellent suggestion. Commissioner Solheim.
One of the items that I think on the matrix was on sub-area plan and not district plan, was economic development recommendations. And I was just thinking about the Odana area plan that we recently reviewed had a pretty significant section about economic development, particularly opportunities to retain and support some of the smaller businesses. So, I was just wondering if that would not be specifically addressed in these plans. Would the Economic Development Department be doing some things on their own, or would it still include some level of that?
Good question. Yeah, because we don't see a check mark under district plan, and it seems like that could be something to include. Brian or Linda or Heather, any comments about that?
Yeah, I can jump in and so yeah, as we've discussed this proposal even over the last week or so internally, and then also this meeting, I think we are expanding the scope of these plans, and so certainly coming back to what we discussed before, that place-based recommendations. We do have the Connect Madison Urban Development Strategy. We can pull in any place-based recommendations in that citywide plan, and in your Odana area example, I think that we could pull in urban development recommendations like we did in Odana plan into this planning framework. I think we're going to be kind of going into a medium depth on a lot of different topics, and I think we could include that as well. And especially, again, if we're really going to make the full shift to district plans and not have as many other sub-area plans or no other sub-area plans, more rare sub-area plans, again, that provides more time for these efforts and for us to include more topics.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I thought the Odana plan had a lot of interesting ideas on the economic development side, so I would want to, retain some of that somewhere. And I was also thinking about how, these align with TIF or TID plans, for example, and that would tie into that as well. So thank you, Brian.
Other comments on that question number 1? How are you envisioning really this working with urban design districts? Because I know there's one urban design district, at least, and maybe more, that is sorely in need of being updated. How are you thinking about that? Heather.
Sure, I can take that one. So that's really a separate item on our work plan, updates to existing urban design districts that would be led by the section that Kevin Burko leads, development review and plan implementation. As you know, we're working now to fill soon the Urban Design Commission secretary position, and would hope that that new person would be able to take on updates to urban design districts. And again, we've included those in our work plan. They'll be a bit delayed now with the vacancy in that position, but really see that as a separate effort.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'll mention if these district plans do include urban design guideline recommendations, we would do, I'm less familiar with this with whatever I work on, but do what we've been doing in the past, where if we have a sub-area plan that would make recommendations that would impact the urban design district, that we would make that change to the urban design district at the part of that board, committee, commission review and approval process. So it would make that, we consider that change to the UDD at the time of plan adoption. I'm not as familiar with this topic, but again, we're keeping our plans and our policies in sync that way, and having that topic considered. Maybe others can chime in and describe it better than I am, but if a plan recommends a change, we would have that change be weighed and considered at the time of the plan being approved, basically.
So there would be a communication essentially between those efforts, essentially, to make sure they're in sync.
To make sure that the urban design change is agreed with, and that, yes, the plan, if that's agreed with, then the plan recommendation would flow into an update to that urban design district.
Okay.
If I'm mischaracterizing this or clarify it.
Okay, I don't see any raised hands, so I think that takes care of it. Thank you both. Then question number 4, I think we have covered. Each planning process will need to begin with a resolution recommended by Plan Commission and approved by Council. That said, at this stage, does the Commission generally support the sequence of the first few district plans suggested for the coming years? And I didn't hear anything about the first few years. The only concern expressed was with F and G. Was there anything else of concern in the sequencing? Seeing no raised hands, that I think is the only concern. And of course, when you speak with alders, you may hear something else, but since the other ones aren't at the same time, my guess is that won't be an issue. Okay. I think that takes care of it. Do commissioners have any other questions or comments? Do staff have any other questions or comments? Heather.
Yes, thank you. This is it's a small item, but I did want the commission to be aware that we're still thinking through, I guess, the semantics of this. That the naming is district plan necessarily the name of this effort, maybe not. And lettering A through A through M or whatever. I think we're leaning towards something, if this moves forward, something more similar to what Denver moved forward with in their neighborhood planning initiative, where they have, far southwest, near west, et cetera, so that it's a little bit more intuitive what cluster of neighborhoods we'd focus on. I think I just wanted to mention that if you have any feedback on that now or at another time, please feel free to share that too.
I totally agree. Don't call them districts. It would be, I think, too confusing with Alder districts. So a different name from that, I would suggest. Alder Lemmer.
I just want to share that I think that sounds wonderful. Everything that you can do to make it as easy to understand and not confusing as possible is great. So that sounds like a really good direction to go in.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Anything else? I want to thank everybody, staff, for working on this, because clearly there's been quite a bit of work that has been put in on this. There's more to go, but this is a great foundation, and even beyond just the foundation. So thank you very much. And thank you to commissioners for having gone through this, because it's a lot of material, and it's a lot to think about and try to digest and give feedback. So thank you all for doing that. If there is, let me see, is there any business by members? Seeing no raised hands, any announcements, then I think we're at adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Alder Lemmer. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Solheim, and I will assume unanimous consent unless I see a raised hand to object. Okay. Thank you all very much.